Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Developmental Screening and Surveillance Echo, brought to you by UT Health San Antonio in collaboration with the Texas Department of State Health Services. My name is Julio Sorblanco, and I will be facilitating today's session. A few housekeeping items. To help with attendance, please enter your full name, affiliation, and email into the chat. As a reminder, these sessions are being recorded for later distribution. Please remember to stay muted unless you are speaking, though we do encourage using the chat and/or raise your hand feature to pose questions or share your perspectives. If you are having connection issues, please privately chat Karen, our Echo IT, for assistance. To ensure privacy, no health information is allowed at any point during the session. This includes names, addresses, birth dates, or any other identifiable information. Let us always make every effort to avoid bias and stigmatizing terms so that we can continue having a space that is respectful and safe to learn. Lastly, today's session will begin with team introductions, followed by a didactic presentation, some brief announcements, and a case study presentation. Right? With that, let's go ahead and move on to some team introductions. First up, we have Dr. Dorothy Mandel.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. I am Dorothy Mandel. I'm an associate professor at UT Health Houston School of Public Health in Austin, and I'm really happy to see everyone this afternoon.
So much. We also have with us Faith Rivera.
Hi, everyone. Faith Rivera, CEO of Alice Avitas Consulting. Thanks for spending time with us today.
And we also have with us Dr. Jennifer Cox.
Hi, everybody. I am Jennifer Cox. I am with My Health, My Resources, Tarrant County, and glad you are here.
Thank you so much for being here. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with our didactic presentation. Faith, once Karen shares your slides, feel free to take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, well, hello, everyone. We're back for part two of our difficult conversations presentation with families. If you guys were here last month, Dr. Mandel gave a great opening presentation about how we bridge partnerships with families and really bring them into the fold of how we support their children. And today, my hope is that we continue on that conversation by talking about how we really can build partnerships with families and that this is not just a one-time conversation, but really a partnership over time for making sure that we create a safe space for children and their families within our care. Next slide, please. So just some disclaimers. We want to make sure that we are using the appropriate language, and if there is anything that we can do to continue to improve this experience or improve what we offer to you all, please be sure to share that with us. And like was mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we have this as a space for everyone to be able to learn and grow together. Next slide. These are my opinions and views, not those of UT Health San Antonio, and I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. So our objectives for today, what are we here to do? Our focus today is really learning to build trust with our families and ensuring that conversations that we bring them, especially if they're difficult conversations, really come from a place of trust and not fear. And the way in which we're going to do that today is through using the Family Engaged Developmental Monitoring Framework to kind of guide our conversation and give us points to pull from. If any of you all are familiar with Help Me Grow or you are a part of a Help Me Grow system, this framework was actually created in partnership between Help Me Grow National Center and the CDC. It's a great framework and excited to apply it to this context today for you all. Second is really ensuring again that we're coming from that place of trust when we are discussing developmental concerns with family, as that can be a very tricky topic and not always a pleasant one. And then number three is giving a chance to apply some real world scenarios through conversation, and then we'll eventually get into the case presentation afterwards. Next slide. So we are going to start with the root cause of what often causes the divide between us and the families that we work with. all of us have the same goal when we're working with children, right? We want to ensure that families feel comfortable bringing their children into our care. We want to ensure that our providers, that they are supported and have the tools and resources that they need to offer the best quality care. And then we also want to make sure that parents feel supported in their ability to support and raise their child when the child is not in care. Even though children who are in care are there for the majority of their time, the majority of their day, that care still obviously continues after the children leave the center. And so when we are figuring out the root cause of the divide that can happen between parents and providers when a concern is brought forth, it often can come down to one of these four pieces. First can be fear. And this can be the provider's fear about not knowing how to handle the conversation, right? It's not easy to bring something hard forward to a parent, especially if you are unsure of how the parents are going to react in this situation. So there can often be that anxiety from the provider's perspective of how is the parent going to react? What are they going to do? Are they going to take my concern seriously? The second cause of the divide can be unconscious bias. And this can be either on the side of the provider or the parent. We all have unconscious biases that come up when we are dealing with certain situations. And if we're not clear on how our bias can be coming forward, or even maybe the bias that the parents bring to this conversation, it can cause us to be starting at different levels. Next is the emotions that can come out, right? We expect parents to have emotions when it comes to what's going on with their child. I would almost be more concerned if a parent was neutral in a conversation about a concern around their child versus them coming forward with a reaction like fear, denial, maybe even defensiveness, guilt, because you are bringing forth conversation or information to them that can create some cognitive dissonance, right? In their mind, here's how their child is and how their child behaves or acts. And then you might be bringing them forward information that is different than their perception. And even though it is natural for them to have these responses, we still have to make sure that we are creating space for parents to express those emotions and create next steps. So, yes, you can express your emotions, but how do we work through them together so that we're moving in the same direction? We all want the same thing. We all want children to get the best quality care. We all want children to develop appropriately. We all want children to achieve their best, but we want to make sure that we're bringing parents alongside that journey with us. And then sometimes cultural disconnects can come about. Maybe it's differences in expression, expectation, communication style, development. Certain cultures have differences in how they expect children to act or behave that may be different than the culture that you are coming from or that your center may have the majority culture of. And so most difficult conversations really bring forth the emotions, trust, and relationship that are there. And those can either be positive or negative, right? If you don't have a strong relationship with the parent before these difficult conversations come about, it can be really tricky to build from a place of trust and mutual respect. But if you have a strong foundation with these parents before this conversation comes to be, then oftentimes it allows you to kind of build from that solid foundation that you already have. Next slide. I want to challenge your thinking from the old model to the new model that you can kind of see on the screen of how we should redefine our role or expectation when it comes to sharing this information with families. The old model often focused a lot more on problems and deficits. So your child is not meeting these developmental markers. We're concerned for these deficits. The child's not meeting these milestones. They're not meeting these items on their checklist, which, yes, is still something that we need to address, but really shifting the focus to how do we partner with families to address these concerns together and even bringing them into those conversations of how we identify concerns. One of the prime examples and one of the things that we'll kind of talk about throughout this is if you're using, developmental screening tool or developmental checklist to kind of tell you how children are doing, is comparing how children are at home to how they are in the center. And so if you guys are familiar with or have used, I know we've talked about them here before, like the CDC Learn the Signs Act Early checklist. I love having those checklists really done in both settings, both in the childcare center or home visiting program, and at home, and coming together and having that conversation about what are you seeing with little Johnny at home versus what are you seeing in the center. And maybe there are opportunities for conversation that little Johnny is doing that activity at home, but there may not be spaces or opportunities that he's done it in the center or vice versa. Children act differently based on what environments they're around. And so is it truly a deficit or a concern in behavior, or is it maybe just a child acting differently? And maybe it is a true concern, and that's also valid too, but allowing parents to be able to help lead that conversation as well, since they are the experts in their children. The old model really focused on just diagnosing delays, whereas this new approach with family engaged developmental monitoring is really looking at the whole child, the whole family, and focusing on overall well-being and developmental success, not just the negative, not just the concerns, the delays, the disorders, but how are we setting up the infrastructure around this family and the support around this family so that the child is able to thrive and the family is able to thrive. And the old model really focused on only the provider's perspective, or the provider is the expert, whereas this new model is really collaborative in nature, and that we have mutual respect for one another. We offer mutual support, and we both have different levels of expertise on this child. And how do we bring those together to really paint a full picture? Next slide. So, like I mentioned, with this mutual support, mutual expertise, we're merging these two levels of expertise into one. Obviously, as the providers, you all are the ones that are with this child for long periods of the day. You see things that the families may not ever see. But we also want to respect the insight, the observations, the expertise that parents bring, and they're bringing their culture, they're bringing their hopes and dreams for their child. And when you weave those two together is really how we get this idea around family engaged developmental monitoring. It's really the partnership between the parents and the providers to ensure that we've got all parties on the same page when it comes to supporting the well-being and development of the child. So, like I mentioned, this is a partnership. This is children being observed and looking at development over time. It's not just a one-time snapshot, and really honoring and respecting that families are the expert on their children. Next slide. So as we are shifting this role, this mindset, there's a couple of additional pieces that I think are important to focus on. I love this line at the bottom is we're not just delivering news, we're building understanding together. Through these conversations that may be difficult at times, how can we use those as a bridge between where the parents are right now and where we want them to be, or where their child needs them to be, in order to create those optimal learning and home environments? Really focusing on this partnership, ensuring that there is active listening going on, hearing from the parents themselves. What are your concerns? What are you seeing at home? If little Johnny is not doing that activity at home or in the classroom, what does that mean to you? Are there ways in which you're maybe seeing this, but we just haven't seen it in the center? And really trying to come from a place of curiosity instead of telling the families what needs to be happening. Focusing on the strengths and growth of the child. This is where that kind of longitudinal focus comes in. And we also know that every single child that is within our care has strengths, has uniquenesses, has things that they are good at. And so, how do we lead with those things, really focusing on the good, And it makes it a little bit easier then to be able to bring forth the areas of concern. I know we've all heard of the compliment sandwich, and even in this scenario, that is true. How are we saying, little Johnny is really good at this? We've noticed some areas of struggle here, and we want to make sure that we really value having him in our classroom and we love having him here. When we only focus on the negative, which if you are anything like me, I am a problem solver at nature. And so I love hearing an issue and addressing it. But when you're dealing with something sensitive, like a child's development, parents not wanting their children to be labeled, or, you telling them that there's something wrong with their children, this is a very sensitive conversation topic to be approached with care. And as much as you can, really focusing on your care for the child, your love for the child, how much you resonate and see the strengths and uniquenesses that they bring, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of unfold the areas of growth that need to happen. And then again, this is ongoing. This is not a one time at the beginning of the school year. We did the ASQ on little Johnny, and here's all the areas that he's struggling. But how is developmental monitoring an ongoing conversation where we're constantly talking about strengths, we're identifying areas for extra support, and we're identifying the specific focuses for growth? Next slide. So the first piece of, if you look at this framework of family engaged developmental monitoring, one of the first core principles is that families are the experts. They know their child better than anyone else. Yes, again, we have the expertise, we have the knowledge on child development and what is needed for our center, but we have to merge those two perspectives together of what parents know to be true about their child, what we know to be true about child development, and where is that interlocking, that middle ground. Because we want to honor their perspective and validate their emotions and response and find a way forward to ensure that their development is moving forward, ensure that you have what you need for the standards of your center, and that they feel that they have the support outside of the classroom as well. Again, so that they don't put walls up and say, oh, this educator, this teacher doesn't like little Johnny. They just want, to tell me everything that's wrong with him. But instead, they feel valued as the expert. So basically, just to wrap up this slide, because I don't know where the recording cut off, is bringing forth the perspective of the educator and the parent together in order to create this holistic picture of a child. Next slide. Principle number 2, development is a timeline, not a snapshot. It's really easy sometimes to look at that specific moment where you're having a meeting with the parent, or you're trying to bring up a conversation about a checklist that was done or a developmental screening. And yes, that point in time is really important, but that point of time is also a part of a larger ongoing timeline, larger ongoing conversation about their child's development. And it ebbs and flows, right? We all know that children's development can progress and regress based on what's going on at home, based on what's going on in their development. Oftentimes, as children are experiencing a big growth spurt or a big developmental spurt in one area, they can regress in another. And so trying to look at this child from the continuum, not just that one point in time when you're bringing forth a concern. And this is part of the reason why development is important to be discussed in an ongoing basis, not just at that one snapshot and point of time. Being able to do these ongoing check-ins, even if they're less formal, can sometimes reduce some of the anxiety that parents have because they don't feel like there's this one big bad meeting with the principal, right? That something's wrong with their child. But if they know, okay, I'm going to be meeting with my child's teacher or the director on an ongoing basis, there's not always that first thought of something's wrong. And we also don't want parents to be surprised, right? If we're bringing forth something about maybe a developmental concern, hopefully this is not the first time that the parents have heard this, and it's something that is just part of that ongoing dialogue and support. Next slide. And then lastly is we have to look at the whole picture of the child. Even though children come to us as just that child, there's their whole ecosystem around them, and their whole ecosystem is really important to understand so you understand how they're coming to you, right? What happened at home that night when they were coming in? Maybe the child didn't sleep well. Maybe there's stress going on in the home. Maybe a new baby was born and now the child is trying to adjust to being a big sibling. Maybe there is some turmoil happening with family or family members are visiting. There are so many different things outside of the center that impact how a child shows up. We also know that culture and what a family respects and values is very much going to impact what they value in terms of the child's developmental skills. We also know that stress impacts child development and it also impacts how the parents show up. Maybe when the parent is coming to talk to you during pickup, they just got fired, or maybe they had a really stressful day with their boss. Maybe just like the child, they didn't sleep well, or they have not had anything to eat all day, or they have not been drinking water. Any of those things that can impact us or impact children can also impact how the parents show up for those conversations. And then what are the extended supports or community resources that these children, these families are taking advantage of, or maybe need to be taking advantage of so that this child truly does have that holistic wraparound support, not just what they're receiving within the center. Next slide. So now that we've talked about the kind of framework around family engaged developmental monitoring and those pieces of development as a continuum, it's happening on an ongoing basis. Parents are the experts, and children don't just show up to us as a child, it's their whole ecosystem. How do you broach those conversations? So it's great to know the whole framework, but what does it mean in practicality? So when we're approaching parents about sensitive topics, a couple things to keep in mind, and I know Dr. Mandel had broached on a couple of these topics last week as well, or last month as well, is first beginning with strengths. We really want to honor and anchor the conversation in what is going well in having the children in your care. And even in times of stress, even in times of developmental concerns, every child, I know that each and every one of you can come up with at least one or two things that are going well. It's an area that they're really strong in, something maybe that makes you laugh or you appreciate about that child. It sets the tone for the conversation as one that is much more positive than starting with, we're here today to talk about how little Jimmy is struggling in every area. The walls are instantly going to go up. We want to make sure that parents know that we see their child, we see their strengths. Asking open-ended questions, approaching with curiosity. And so ensuring that you're not just coming with answers or with speculations, but how are we really giving parents the space to be able to reflect and share how things are going? Sometimes parents might come to the conclusions that we already had through just giving them this space to reflect or asking, what does this look like at home? What are you noticing? What are you most proud of? Are there any areas that you are concerned or seeing things that may be out of the ordinary? Because then again, you're giving them the space to come to you as the experts, and then you can kind of guide them down the road that you want them to go. And then always being curious. Again, there's so many different facets that go into children's development, and we want to make sure that the curiosity is there to build conversation and to build trust. Next slide. So some of the words that can help build bridges or help foster a space of curiosity and support are, instead of using the terminology he can't, making it a little bit more positive or open-ended of he is still developing this skill or he is still working on this. Instead of saying I'm concerned, maybe opening up the conversation about exploring that topic of development together. Instead of using the terminology he should, I really try to stay away from could, should, would as much as I can. To me, they place a lot of guilt and blame, and there's something subconscious about that. Like when you talk about yourself, I should have done that, right? There's some level of guilt or shame that you're putting on something that you didn't do. And so instead of that, being able to frame it more generally of most children at this age are able to do blah, blah, blah. Or we have seen, or research shows us that children aren't typically able to do this by this age. And so even just how we phrase certain sentences and conversations can help parents feel a little bit more at ease, and it doesn't feel as accusatory. Next slide. When perspectives are different, stay curious. I'm sure each and every one of you can think of a situation where you brought something forth and someone had a very different perspective on what you shared. I can't tell you the number of times that, whether it's with my team or with a parent, even in a training, where I presented something in a certain way, and the way that the person perceived what I shared was completely different. And so, if parents are coming to you maybe a little bit more on edge than you expected, or they're concerned about your concern, instead of correcting or having to teach the parent, ask some clarifying questions. Again, stay curious. Making sure that number one, you guys are understanding the information from the same perspective, that you are understanding what things look like at home versus just in the center. And even if a parent disagrees, that's okay. Parents are going to have their own perspectives on what you share. And this hopefully is not the first time that this conversation is going to be had. When, parents are maybe disagreeing, or if they come off a little defensive, again, you're shifting their perspective, or you're sharing information that may be different from their perspective on their child. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time to understand, to respect, and maybe they don't ever get there. But your job is not to convince them. Your job is to share the information, equip them with the tools and resources that they need. And then at the end of the day, they will be the ones that make the decision of what they feel is best for their child. Next slide. When possible, be as specific and objective as possible. Connecting it directly to development, not the personality of the child. I love this example that's on here of the subjective piece is he's hyperactive and can't pay attention. But the objective observation, which kind of takes a little bit of the emotion out of it, is during group time, I've noticed he has difficulty staying engaged for more than a minute. So you are taking emotion out of it. You're not putting additional labels on what's happening, but you're really just staying grounded in what you're noticing. And I think sometimes, especially when we have an emotional connection to these children, it's hard to stay objective. And we want to put our 2 cents into it. But as much as possible, keeping it objective, tied to the developmental outcomes that you are seeing the child is maybe struggling with, so that we can keep the conversation grounded in what is being seen, not bringing in any additional assumptions or external biases. Next slide. I think this one is the hardest, at least from my perspective of, if you all are anything like me, if you are in this role, I'm sure you are, that we like to fix things. We are problem solvers by nature. And unfortunately, there are times where that is not our job. Our role is to support the parents in making the decision that they feel is best for their child, even if it's different than our own. And so what can we do? We can share community resources, maybe programs or supports that the children and families can benefit from. If you guys are in a Help Me Grow community, highly recommend that you are connecting families with Help Me Grow so that they can get connected to a variety of tools and community resources. Being able to share information and developmentally appropriate tools like the Learn the Signs, Act Early developmental milestone checklists. The app is a great tool and resource, but again, you're giving families power by giving them the tools to be able to make their own educated decisions. And then inviting collaboration. is asking parents, how can we work together on this? We both want the same thing for your child. We want them to thrive. We want them to be happy. We want them to be successful. And so, how do we do that in partnership with one another? And we're not here to fix the child. That is not our job, but our job is to be able to support the family in making the decision that they feel is best. Next slide. And part of our role also is helping to rebuild trust. There are a lot of families, I'm sure each and every one of you can identify families within your own program that have been hurt by systems before or don't trust certain systems, and they are maybe barriers to access. And so, what can you do? Number one is recognize that there are systematic barriers out there. We have to acknowledge that not every family has had the most positive or equitable experiences when it comes to whether it's the medical system, the social service system. And so, if you just say, go talk to your pediatrician, they may or may not be willing to do that. We want to continue to promote them getting access to the right resources and information, but also honoring where they're coming to us from. Number two is honoring their background and understanding their culture. And then number three is building that trust intentionally and over time. This is not going to be a quick fix when you have to rebuild trust with families or even start that process to build trust in the first place. Next slide, please. And so just some questions to ponder if you're applying this to a real life scenario within your own center, is maybe think of a child where you've had this opportunity where something needs to be done. Maybe a child is really struggling in a certain area of development, but you are unsure of how to broach this conversation with the family. And hopefully this has been you've built trust over time with this family, and so this is not a shock to them when you start bringing forth the conversation of development. But I challenge you to ponder is how would you first start this conversation with the family without focusing on the problem first, but really focusing on the child's strengths as a whole, and then how that support could really help build this area of concern into a strength. So if we're using the specific example of a child in your program is not speaking, and you need to initiate a conversation with the parents, how would you first start that conversation? And what kind of open-ended questions would you ask first to gather the family's insight versus coming straight with answers and solutions? Next slide, please. So again, this is not a one-time fix. This is a continuous cycle of partnerships. And so this framework kind of shows you a couple of different ways and spaces that you can continue this over time. First and foremost is anchoring the relationships and trust and the strength of the child. Second is ask, don't assume. We want to understand from the family's perspective what's going on with their child first. Third is sharing your observations. So again, that objective pieces that we take emotion out of it and we say this is just what we're seeing. Number four is collaboration. So how do we work on this together? I don't have all the answers. How do we do this together? And then number five is this is ongoing. So follow-up will need to be had, not just about that concern or that developmental piece, but all aspects of the child's developmental journey. On to the next slide, please. Our job is to empower families. It's not always easy, especially when we truly feel that we have the answers and we could just tell them what to do and it would all be fixed, right? But part of the beauty of the role that you guys hold is creating spaces that may not be easy, but allow for meaningful conversations with families. And when we can use these spaces to help families be seen, be heard, and feel valued, it truly creates a partnership that lasts not just in that one conversation, but for the long term. And when families feel empowered to be their child's first teacher, when they get to be that person that continues the care outside of when they're in the center, it really creates a special bond between the family and that provider. And so, my one thing that I want to leave you with is really focusing on this as a partnership We are not the authorities over parents. We are there to walk alongside them, to support them so that they can empower and raise their children. I think the last slide is just my information. I'm happy to open it up for questions and feel free to connect with me.
Yes, thank you so much for that great presentation, Faith. It was very, very insightful, and I do see that there was a lot of comments popping off in the chat. That's awesome. At this time, if anybody wants to ask any questions for Faith on her presentation, feel free to unmute and ask your questions.
Hey, Faith, I want to bring something in that came in the chat, and Jennifer, if you can comment on this too. What do you do when let's role play a little bit. I brought this up in the last one of being the parent that said my child doesn't do that at home. And I'm serious, my child never did those behaviors at home. So how, given this and coming from a place of curiosity, then what would be your advice of like, what is a good next response? Because I believe those behaviors were happening somewhere else, but those behaviors you need to understand they're not happening at home either. That happens a lot with biting. It happens a lot with other challenging behaviors. So how could you use what you talked about today to open up that conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, of course, it is difficult. Yes. Um, and I agree 100% with everything that Faith said, but I also think that it comes with how you approach them. What is are you coming at them like, oh my gosh, your child's biting? Or are you going to soften the blow a little bit for them and be very kind? Because yes, I have 4 kids and I would be upset if somebody said something about my child or like development or behavior. Um, of course, you got 2 different kinds of parents, though. You got one that will say, never seen that before. One that says, oh my gosh, I see it all the time. Please help me. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know what to do. Um, but I did just kind of let them know after they said that, my child doesn't do that at home. Well, yes, they don't, maybe because they don't have to share toys with 4 other friends or the
Mhm.
atmosphere. Maybe, because there is other kids in the class, so maybe they just get overwhelmed, a little uh, I forgot the word I'm looking for. It just lost my thought. But overstimulated. Maybe they don't get that way at home.
Mhm.
And then that kind of like helped lead them into the conversation of, okay, I understand. What can we do? How can we help? And the conversation actually went very well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, I was very thankful for them too. Thank you so much for being supportive. Thank you for understanding. Just letting them know that their first reaction too sometimes is, oh my gosh, are they getting kicked out? Okay, no, no, we're not there yet. This is the first time that we've had this conversation, but let's try to work on it. Let's try to see what we can do. And for them to be so supportive, God, that's all I can ask for.
Mhm. I love that response, Jennifer.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
that is the parent on the other side because you also have to be careful as the parent who's received that conversation. You have to be careful too, as the person delivering it, assuming that this behavior must be a prevalent behavior that happens a lot.
Right.
And that's how, as a parent, that conversation came to us. This must be a prevalent behavior that she is doing all the time. We're like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. They don't know what goes on inside of the center most of the time, you know?
Well, yeah. And it also, like the way I structure home is a very different than the way I
Right.
structure you guys would structure in this case, it was kindergarten, the way kindergarten is structured.
Right. Right.
And so I
I,
I can't answer.
right. I like the responses sometimes when the parents like, oh, I just let them go into the room and cry it out. Ooh, sorry, we can't do that.
Right.
We don't have another room for them to go and cry it out. We have to work with them, talk to them, get down on their level. Maybe you should try to do that at home. I
Mhm.
don't, I don't know. It's like it's hard sometimes, but I mean, you got to at least have a little bit of a heart
Yeah.
to let the parents know, and then that will also show, like, give some respect so that you can get some respect back. Um, in case anything goes wrong, then you both are in agreement. Okay, well, we've tried, you've tried, we've done everything that we can, we've reached out to resources. Now we might have to just part ways. Maybe the program isn't for your child and we want them to be successful. So, and then helping them find another center or
Mhm.
somewhere else to go and not just like, bye, see you later.
Yeah.
At least make them feel like they were helped, they were loved.
Yeah. Faith, Jennifer, you have something to add?
It makes me think of a situation. This was with a coworker, but it was when I was with the Regional Day School for the Deaf, and with the early childhood. And there was a young student who, at school wasn't using speech, as hoped through the therapy and everything that, he had been receiving, since the implant. And so, the staff that worked with him had some concerns that he just about progress and maybe needing to change modalities of communication. But the parents kept saying, he talks at home, he talks at home, kind of thing. And this was before we all had a video camera on our phones. But the suggestion was, hey, will you video him talking at home? Because I'll be honest, I suspect some of the staff didn't believe the parents. But sure enough, they came to school with a videotape of that child speech being perfectly typical and what would be expected at home. He just wasn't doing it yet at school. So just like those skills that maybe, or the challenging behaviors we see at school that parents don't see at home, and like Jennifer William mentioned, could completely have to do with the environment's different, expectations are different. The same thing, sometimes things we're concerned about that we don't see when parents say they do it at home, they really may. Um, and I also think sometimes a question when parents, say that a child, they don't see something at home that the school is concerned about. If we've observed that behavior, kind of tracked, like, hey, we know he bites when he needs to share, or he pushes, or um, I don't know, whatever the behavior is when it's time to put an activity away and go to the next one, whatever it is, asking the family. So when when they need to clean up for dinner time or whatever it is, how do you handle that he doesn't, become dysregulated or
Mm-hmm.
demonstrate those behaviors? And they may have certain routines that we really could implement in the classroom that would help those transitions, be better.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna would kind of say is like dig deeper. Anytime a behavior is coming out, right, there's some underlying cause, stimulation, stressor. Behavior is just a response to how children are feeling and thinking. And so I would still say approach it with curiosity is dig a little deeper. So if the concerning behavior, maybe that's happening at school, that's not happening at home, or vice versa, is biting. Well, what's triggering that and kind of drilling it down to the root cause and then being able to find appropriate ways that both parties feel good with addressing that because it may not be coming up in one area versus the other right now, but that doesn't mean that it won't at some point.
Thank you so much for all of that great input, y'all. That was really, really awesome. And I do see that there is still more in the chat.
Mhm.
In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on to announcements, and then I will briefly run us through our case. Unfortunately, our case presenter could not be present today, but we'll walk through it and then get any feedback from the community, any questions that would be insightful or anything like that. Um, with that, Karen, can you please bring up the announcements for me? All right, thank you so much. Um, don't forget to claim your credits using your TechPeds account and scanning the QR code on the screen. You may also use the link that's being posted in the chat. Reminder that a TechPeds account is needed to claim credit for this session. Next slide, please. Are you interested in presenting a case? Cases can describe a challenge that you are presently facing with a child in your care. Challenges can be around screening, intervention, referrals, etc. As a case presenter, you do not have to prepare a formal presentation. To submit a case, please use the link that will be posted to the chat. Next slide, please. And join us at the next Texas Issues Echo on Friday, May the 8th for a presentation on continuing the conversation, having hard conversations with parents, part 3. All right, thank you so much, Karen. And so before we move on to our case for today, we would just like to remind everyone that no protected health information is allowed either in the chat or in the discussion. And let us always try to continue to make the space inclusive and open to respectful dialogue. With that, Karen, please go ahead and bring up the case and I'll walk us through. All right, so walking us through relevant background for this case. This is a 4-year-old boy. The case presenter stated that the child is slow at learning. They do not make eye contact, and the assessments that were completed were a CLI and a DECA. The strengths and resources are he is very smart. He can build things with Lego, has fine motor skills, enjoys using the computer, and has good relationships with other students, but sometimes doesn't like to share. Next slide, please. Current challenges and or behaviors is he can't recite the ABCs, count, write, read, and barely speaks clearly. And the case presenter stated that she is unsure if he may have ADHD or be on the autism spectrum. A brief list of the strategies and interventions that were used is they provided mother with resources on assisted programs and learning materials. She did state that mother is in denial and needs assistance. And questions and or concerns that she would like addressed specifically is how to assist mother with more resources. With that, I'd like to go ahead and open up to the floor for any thoughts, comments, anything for this case.
Hello, I didn't get the Q code when you splashed it up.
Gotcha.
Hello?
No? Yes, I heard you.
Oh,
No
I'm sorry.
worries at all, Flora. Yeah, I think Karen should have posted the link in the chat, but she'll also put it up towards the end of the session. That way you're able to scan it.
Okay, thank you.
So have anyone tried to teach the ABCs maybe in a different language for the child to learn it?
That wasn't stated by the case presenter, but that is good insight to consider. Maybe there is a language barrier that is occurring. And the case themselves, they are located in Houston, Texas. If that gives any insight for anybody who has any resources that could be of assistance to mom in this case.
It was mentioned in the chat that if the mom is in denial, let her do the test herself, give her the tools that she needs so that she can observe these pieces at home. I did that with a parent, it took over a month little by little, and now she is coming to me telling him basically what she was seeing.
And Jessica, are you able to unmute? Maybe tell us a little bit more about how that experience was for you, your wins and your struggles that you had, any challenges that you
Yes.
may face.
Well, I have experience with autistic students in the past. That's my strong in the observation. So I went to the classroom because he screamed a lot and he cries a lot. I observe a lot of things. So little by little, I was like, okay, I told mom, and mom was in denial. She didn't want to listen. So I said, okay, I'm not going to touch that subject because it's a sensitive subject. So I'm going to tell her the same things little by little. So today I observed this. He was covering his ears. Today we observed this discomfort with people close by, and little by little, little things like that. I've been telling her, and I said, like, you know what? I suggest, or just tell the doctor these things, like and I make a list. I said, tell the doctor these things, what we observe, and I give her a couple of things to observe at home as well, when there's loud noises, what he react, doing on purpose, and see how he reacted. And if he's the same, I suggest for you to tell the doctor, because it's the same observation that we did. So little by little, she did told the doctor, because I was on top of her every day, different things, not always the same. And finally, she told the doctor, and the doctor sent some tests, and yes, he was autistic. The noises were extremely loud for him. So we have, oh, I told the mom before that we have headphones, and we noticed that he come down faster and easier when the headphones. So because of that, she proceed to tell the doctor, and yes, he's autistic, and now we can know what we know what to do, how to do it. The headphones is one in each classroom that he is in, so he always have it. He had it on his reach, so when he feel uncomfortable, he run to his cubby. He knows what to do, uh, and he feels more comfortable. So yes, it's hard to talk to the parents, especially if they're denial. But if you give them the tools and they observe by themselves, if they see it, it's not like, oh, they're telling me my kid is dumb, or my kid is autistic, or my kid is hyperactive. I'm seeing it, and it's showing on the papers. So that way, it's them observing, no other people telling them.
That's awesome. I think that's incredibly insightful and very proactive on y'all's approach of, hey, let's try these things, let's do these. Um, Really, really awesome. Brandy, I do see that you have your hand raised. Feel free.
Yeah, so in my experience, with similar situations where parents were in denial, um, what I tried to do is like invite them to like the classroom to help with like story time or around times so they can see that how the other kids are. So it's kind of like invite them to be in the classroom without putting pressure on them so they could see what's going on. And I had one parent in mind, and she used to come and help, and she started to see the differences in the other students and her child. And then she started asking, okay, hey, is this, normal? Is this not normal? And stuff like that. And that's what helped bring it home because she was in denial at first. But once she got to see the differences and what um, it helped a lot. And it didn't seem like I was attacking her or anything like that. She kind of, in her mind, she figured she noticed the differences on her own without me making her feel bad, you know? And I just offered the resources.
No, and that's really awesome. I think that was very empowering of y'all in your approach to, hey, would you come? Would you observe? Giving her the autonomy to make these decisions for herself. Any other thoughts or shared perspectives from our learning network, our hub, anything? All right, no worries. Um, I am glad of the thoughts that were shared. We'll definitely be sharing that with our case presenter, and hopefully we'll be having her come back to give a little bit more insight on this case that was present for today. With that, I will go ahead and pivot over to Dr. Cox. Would you please give us the summary for today?
Absolutely. Thank you. And Faith, that was so great. I took so many notes, and I'm sure others did well. But of course, today we continued our conversation with having our conversation about having difficult conversations with the caregivers of the children we serve. And so Faith talked about how we always want to start with trust and not fear. And that can be hard because we can be anxious about what we're about to share and what the response may be. And then understanding that the root of when there is division between what we're trying to communicate and what a family perceives is our own fear as a provider, our bias, the parental emotions, and those cultural disconnects that we may have. And I think it's important to highlight that those parental emotions, as mentioned, are expected. I mean, again, who wouldn't have certain feelings or thoughts when a concern is shared? And then also keeping in mind that I know the word denial has come up many times today, that that's just part of the process, that's one of those feelings that they have and should be expected, especially when new concerning information is shared. She talked a little bit about an old model and a new model, the old model focusing on problems and us being the experts as we talk to a parent, as opposed to going in as someone who's wanting to walk a journey with a family to discover together and partnering. And really recognizing that the family is the expert about the children that they care and love. That we're not delivering news, we are building understanding together. Excuse me, was a quote on one of the slides that I really like too. And then she went through multiple principles, but again, that the family has data that we need. So asking them questions. I think always starting with curiosity when it comes to just about anything is best practice. That again, development is across a timeline. So just one moment in time, 1 week of a child's development is not the whole picture. And that we want to always be looking at the whole child. And that includes also looking at what kind of stressors are occurring in the family, how does culture impact that, and what kind of supports is the family accessing, and what kind of supports can they access. And we always want to begin with strengths to help build that trust, that acceptance, and communicating to families that we want your child here. We are glad that you and your family are part of this program. And then let's move forward together.
Thank you so much for that great summary, Dr. Cox. And thank you to everyone that attended today's session. The TechPeds link will be emailed out to everyone. And please join us at the next Texas Dishes Echo on Friday, May the 8th.